country and about the film. So please can you contextualize a little bit the situation when the film was made?
I would say, what led to, I will contextualize the socioeconomic context of the events that led to the ouster of Blaise Compaoré in 2014. Because you have, the main issue was how, the president wanted to amend an article which is known as Article 37, so that he can remain in power after already been in power for 27 years. So, in the weeks leading up to his ouster, you have demonstrations that were mainly fueled by young people, but also by civil rights movements. And the film really captured this spirit of the resistance by young artists that are really using the arts to bring about social change, and also to bring about, to end a status quo, wherever they see that, progress is not being made on a lot of fronts. And for a president who has always been in power for 27 years, want to remain in power forever. So I think that's the socio-economic context of the film itself.
But what led them to make the film, and how was it difficult to make the film in the context?
I think the film was made after the insurrection was completed. So in that sense, I think it's more like historical, archival work. So in that sense, it was relatively, to get the footage, but also to have interviews people who have been actively involved in the demonstration. And for me, one of the two things that I really like about this film is it's not like I would say the regular documentaries where you have only a voice-over narration. But here you have people who have actively been involved in bringing down this president, the president who's been in power for 27 years, who speak their own voice, who takes you as the viewer onto their own journey, how this change has been able to be made. And the bigger question is, can this change be replicated in other African countries for presidents who have been in power for a relatively long period of time?
Yes, what about the aesthetic of the film and the formal making of the technical aspects?
For the technical aspects, I would say that, if you remember the opening scene and the closing scenes, and I always said, if you watch a movie, pay attention to the opening scene and the closing scenes, because it says a lot about, the storytelling. And the opening scene, we have aerial shots of the city of Ouagadougou, which is kind of flattened. If you give us the idea of a Sahelian area, which is rugged, and the environment is a little bit austere. We have the same also similar shot at the end of the movie where we can see the Sendu Peaks. And you can say, can anybody grow things here? Probably not. So which, tells you, it's in this rugged and this austere environment that people don't let anyone walk over them. That's where we can really situate resistance.
Yeah. I'd like to open the floor to you if you have any question. Yes, sir?
So, just one comment about the film. It reminds me of Whose Streets, like what you just said, where they actually piece together people's experiences afterwards, from Ferguson to the protests. But my question is about Monsanto. What is the effect there? I mean, how is Monsanto, were there deals that were signed that are still, that the country is still obligated to? How does that impact Burkina Faso now?
Okay, the question was about the impact of Monsanto now and how they deal with, yeah.
I can say that for Monsanto, the deal has been scrapped when, it collapsed in the back room. The deal has been scrapped and now it's back to where it's not OGM anymore, GMO, because Burkina Faso for many years has been the African #1 cotton producing country. And for this year, I think Mali overtook Burkina Faso. And Burkina are very proud and they want to regain that #1 spot. But definitely the deal is off.
Okay. Yes? Another question? Yes?
Yeah, can you explain to the audience who Thomas Sankara was and what happened to him? Because I understood that he was overthrown by the president afterwards, Blaise Compaoré, who was basically under his wing. It's like a form of betrayal, if you will. It puts into context what you're talking about, this youth rebellion against his system.
Yeah, to put it back into the context, as because some of the protagonists in the documentary say, we were born after Sankara, but Sankara lives on in us, which tells you his legacy is so profound in the Burkinabe society. Sankara came to power in 1983. Came to power, and his right-hand man was Blaise Compaoré.
Right.
And what happened is, October 15, 1987, as of now, we can safely say that Blaise Compaoré, staged a coup, and Sankara was assassinated. Sankara is a very popular Pan-Africanist leader that is revered in Africa, but also all over the world. And Thomas Sankara remained really popular for his progressive ideas on gender, on economics, on women, on really being able to take care of yourself, be proud of who you are. And that relates to youth. This is very relatable to youth nowadays, because you have high unemployment, youth high unemployment, and there is the lack of who is the next leader, who can we look up to as an example to draw inspiration for us. I'm talking about youth. And you have, always, look back to Sankara, who has never been the president who came to power to enrich himself or to make his entourage very rich, but instead to serve the people first. And that message is still well alive.
Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so the film really focused on Ouagadougou and like the movement within Ouagadougou, but really the majority of Burkina is people in rural areas and big paysans. And so I'm just wondering, one, what you think the role of people from more rural areas was in the revolution in 2014, and then two, what you think the effect of that revolution was on people.
Yeah. The role of rural outside.
I don't know if everybody
Yeah.
heard her question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you correctly right about this, that the film really focuses on Ouagadougou, while we can safely say that 80% of Burkinabe population really lives in the remote areas. I would say that for the events, because leading up to the October 30th, you have in the military hierarchy, if you want, the chief of staff, who was a little bit hesitant about really asking the president to step down. And that real hesitancy was prolonged into the transition, when the transitional government came into power. And when the transitional government came to power, you have the presidential guard that was still loyal to Blaise Compaoré, who wanted basically him to come back to power. And the chief of staff was still hesitant. And when the presidential guard staged another coup, you have the garrison, you have the military in the different cities, not Ouagadougou. They're the one who said, you know what, we are marching onto Ouagadougou if you guys don't release the power to the people, because this popular insurrection was made